History is full of rich connections to God and the great outdoors He created for us. I'm on a mission to share these experiences with my children, alongside other fathers who want to introduce their sons and daughters to the beauty and bounty of the world where we are blessed to walk with our Heavenly Father in His garden. My name is Jacob Whitley. This is Fathers and the Great Outdoors.
Matt! Shoot it. You dropped him, dude. Let's go. You just killed a freaking giant, bro. You just killed a giant.
Welcome to Fathers in the Great Outdoors. If you want to continue to support this content, you can visit our website at greatoutdoorspodcast.com, and we got lots of cool merch and some equipment you might find interesting as well. Today we have Chris Campanelli. How you doing?
I'm doing well, my man. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a blessing to be joining you here this evening.
Yeah, I'm glad that we were able to set this up.
I am as well, man. It's a pleasure to meet you. I guess right through mutual. Is it mutually through Joel? That's how we got connected, right? Joel Pulio with Dryads. Yeah.
And I think you might have done your podcast with him just before mine, or at least they were released in that order. And yeah, just caught my eye. So I'm always looking for people to interview, and yeah, I guess we ended up setting this up.
That's right, man. I'm super glad to be here. I've been checking out what you're doing. It's amazing stuff.
Thank you.
Something that definitely touches my heart in a near and dear way, man. So I'm super excited to be here with you.
Yeah.
Man, did you get out to the woods? You get to go hunting today?
I did. Didn't get anything though. So I always like to just kind of jump into the interviews, just asking about your background. How did you get started in the great outdoors?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I definitely, I feel like I've got a life kind of in part and parcel built by the outdoors, really. I mean, that's actually how I met my wife, was through a hunting buddy that I now call my brother-in-law. His name is Alex, and it's a pretty cool long story. I won't bore everybody with it, but yeah, I've been in short, to condense things, hunting since I was about 14 or 15 years old. Didn't grow up, as the proverbial, dad taking me hunting at a really young age. I was, super involved in sports. I played baseball religiously my entire life, football as well. So that took up the, vast majority of that father and son time that I had with my dad, even though he grew up, hunting and fishing and doing some things kind of, small game, not so much, big game deer hunting like I do now, but had an appreciation for it and an understanding of it. And always kind of allowed me to respect it from afar. And then I had some cousins and things that were involved in the outdoors. And sure enough, by the time I kind of progressed my way through that middle school, high school, that awkward young age, when you're figuring everything out, I found myself like really, really enamored with it, thanks to being like pretty much best friends with my cousin at the time when we were about 14 and 16 years old, give or take. And he was basically like, hey man, you want to start trying this thing out? So I dove into it full force. And I actually found myself within a year, hung up the football cleats, hung up the baseball cleats. And I was literally just obsessed with all things, especially hunting, but definitely fishing, firearms, skeet and trap, all that fun stuff. Right. And it has never let me go ever since. It's pretty much grabbed me with both hands, so to speak, and pulled me in. And, just through kind of happenstance, really what I look at as a faith journey, and being, my steps being guided by God, I've been connected with a lot of amazing outdoorsmen. And yeah, like I said, found myself connected with one who had a sister who was single, and now I've got a wife, and we just found out we're expecting our third child this year.
Oh, congrats!
So thank you so much. I appreciate that, man. And yeah, it's I have a life built by the outdoors, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I just love this stuff. So I guess that's the long and short of it.
Yeah. So when you were, you said your cousin introduced you. What was the first thing you did?
The first thing, I mean, we would literally, since the time I was 9 years old, I guess I could even dial it a few years before that with that same cousin. We lived in the same neighborhood. And at that point, it was air guns, it was pellet guns, it was BB guns in the backyard. And then it progressed, into shooting targets with an old Browning compound bow. I've talked about it on my podcast a few times, like a early 80s, crude Browning compound bow that it literally took me like 4 years to just get trained up to pull this thing back. It was a hand-me-down gift that somebody had literally just said, here, I don't know what to do with this thing. Here, have it. And we would run around, slinging arrows around my parents' backyard. And I didn't grow up by definition a country boy by any means. I mean, we had a little half-acre lot that had some woods behind it, and that was our playground. We were back there, like I said, shooting cans, shooting probably squirrels and rabbits and stuff when it was season, like just everything we could do. And then that same general area, about 14 or 15, I remember my cousin taking me to a little shooting range that we had just outside of town. And with literally probably a 22 and maybe some bird shot and a 12 gauge. And that's where it really like clicked for me. I'm like, man, this stuff is so cool. I want to get involved with every part of this and make it my lifestyle.
Yeah. When you between fishing and hunting, which one of those came first?
I know I was fishing earlier in life, right? And it was just those little kind of happenstance fishing, go to the local pond with my parents and my brother when I was really young. It wasn't super serious, but it was just like, obviously, fishing rod came, kind of first and foremost, but I actually took the hunting part of it way more serious once I started it. So I would say hunter first, fisherman second, and I can't claim fishing more than hunting now, even though I live right here on the shores of Lake Erie. There are so many guys that are true blue, fishermen, cut their teeth on fishing, and that's not me. I'm more of a hunter first, fisherman second, but I love them both. It's all part of the lifestyle for me, for sure.
Yeah, I think my background. It was my grandfather that introduced me to fishing, and that's kind of what got me hooked, literally.
Yes.
So I even though I love hunting, I think fishing is always going to be my number one passion. And to me, it's almost because it's so simple, just throw a rod in the car and drive down the street kind of a thing, where hunting, you have to kind of prepare and do some research.
Yes. Amen to that. Right. I mean, it's so accessible. And that's something I've talked about on in my work throughout the years has been, the accessibility of hunting. I feel like it is getting better, right? We see the rise of like the suburban hunters that are, taking over YouTube, right? You guys probably know who I'm talking about. And just in general, there's more hunting opportunities now. And I think we can be grateful for that. But like you said, it's still not as easy as just throwing a rod and a reel, in the car and heading to your local water hole, whatever that might look like. It could be a stream, it could be a lake, it could be the ocean, it could be anything. Fishing really is it's the everyman's outdoor sport. And I'm thankful, absolutely, to have a background in it. But maybe that was my draw to hunting too. In some ways, was it seemed like such a challenge, right? Just to find a spot, just to find wild animals out there that could be hunted. That it really lit that fire of a challenge within me. But there's nothing like wetting a line and getting out there no matter where you can.
Yeah. What was the first thing you hunted?
First thing was whitetails. That was really the first thing. And I did a couple of, I guess you've got like a shadow hunt really with my cousin and his dad. I remember going out and obviously I had no license and, in the state of Ohio back then. And I think even still now, right? You have to take some kind of a hunter's ed course. Hadn't done any of that yet. I just wanted to go and shadow and like, will I even like this? Right. Because My dad had enough experience, like I said, in small game hunting, and he might have gone out over a few gun seasons for deer and stuff. And he knew how challenging and tricky, right? And how cold it was, and knew the fact that I wasn't really used to that. So he's like, why don't, before you go do all of that and take your hunter's ed and buy the gear and really commit to this, why don't you just go shadow your cousin? So that's what I did. And it was on, whitetail hunt in the fall. Probably like this time of year. Honestly, it was right around the holidays. I can remember it was like a late Ohio gun season, maybe even muzzleloader season in early January. And I went out with them and literally just shadowed for an entire day. And then I remember going out in spring turkey season with him and doing the exact same thing the following spring. I was a freshman in high school. And I remember I skipped spring football practice, and my parents were just livid. They were livid with me for skipping football practice to go hunting. And man, it was one of the most influential, consequential things I've ever done. And the turkey hunt just resounded with me. And that's really honestly what probably got me ate up with it more than anything, was hearing those turkeys talking in the woods. And if you've done it before ever, without even killing a turkey, how special it is. Just that nature's amphitheater out there.
Yeah. I got started hunting kind of later in my life, and a buddy of mine became interested at the same time.
Yeah.
And he lived at the base of kind of where you could drive into a certain mountain area that we had heard about for hunting. And I did probably a minimal amount of research, but he made it sound like he knew exactly where we were going. And he almost made it sound like this is like the hunting spot. Like we're going to drive up. There's going to be other hunters just getting out of their cars in this parking lot. And then we're just all going to go into the woods and hunt turkey. Mm-hmm. And so we started this drive to basically nowhere. And I'm like, where are we, man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that feeling for sure. Right. You're like, do you really know where you're going? Yeah.
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 So that was an interesting experience, and then definitely did a lot of research after that. But I was just telling another buddy that it took me about 2 years hunting public to finally get a turkey.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Hunting anything public, right? It's a challenge. I mean, depending on your state too, right? Obviously there's nuance and difference, right? Between public, if you're out West, or, talking with Joel from Dryads, right? It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. He couldn't believe that, all we hunt here in Ohio, especially, is private land. There's not a whole lot of public land. There are a few probably hidden gems. I don't want to speak for everything, but oh my gosh, it is a newfound respect once you go out and you hunt public, and you realize number one, how vast those properties can be. Number two, how the competition is palpable sometimes, depending on where you're at. So yeah, that's an awesome way to go. I feel like that is kind of the best way though, right? Wouldn't you say, like, to start from public and you get an appreciation for how special it really is to locate animals, and then to better yet, to harvest one within a couple of years, man. Hats off to you for sure.
Yeah. That was back when I lived in California. So you basically had the suburbs on the coast, the desert in the center, and then the mountains in the middle, which was literally the only place to go. So everybody goes there, and then you're lucky if you're one of the few that actually gets to find a turkey because it's so overhunted.
Sure. Oh, I'm sure. Big populated state. I mean, the most populous state. Absolutely. That's cool. So California, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, we're in North Carolina now.
Hey, I'd say that's an upgrade, right? Now you don't. I feel like so. California though, that's kind of an underrated state from everything. There are some really beautiful and wild,
for the
wildlife rich areas of California that people think LA and San Diego and San Francisco, but it's a vast state out there. It's huge.
Yeah. I definitely, when I go visit family and stuff, I always go to the ocean, try to go fishing, because to me, I can't find anything comparable than fishing or even swimming in the Pacific. I like to free dive too. So when I go to the East Coast, you can't really see anything, but it's super clear over there.
Yes, the waters. Oh my gosh.
I need to take a visit to the Gulf because I'm only like 9 hours from there, so it
Mhm.
wouldn't even be that big of a trip.
Absolutely.
I lost my train of thought. So when you were looking to make a family, did you have kind of when you're doing all this outdoor stuff, the idea that you're gonna share this with your future kids?
That's the dream, right? I feel like, especially as a dad, I'm like, yeah, you start to build that lifestyle in the outdoors, and that was the dream. But then again, right? You just life is so crazy, and it takes all of us in so many different directions. You hope to meet somebody that's a partner that sees eye to eye with you on your hunting lifestyle, or even fishing, whatever it may be, just your outdoor lifestyle in general. But you don't know until you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it starts to come to fruition, and you realize that you're compatible on those levels as well, and it makes things progress even better and even more flawlessly. But yeah, it's always been the dream. I feel like ever since I started to grow up in it, and you certainly hit those late teens and your 20s, and it's like, man, I just I would find myself daydreaming someday about bringing a son or a daughter out to the field with me. And it was always kind of multiplied by the fact that my hunting journey really took off on a family farm that I knew of growing up. It was owned by my aunt and uncle, and like I said, in that whole sports craze of my life growing up, let's say from the freshman year of high school, prior, that I knew of the place, but I'm like, oh, yeah, it's their farm. And then once I started with an interest in the outdoors, that place became my life, and I became the primary caretaker of that property, and just under 100 acres in more, East Central Ohio. And I mean, it just took my heart with it. And I just, the further I got involved in that and in the management and caretaking of that farm, it was the dream. Like, I can't wait to someday bring my family as a whole to this place and share with them how special that bond is with the land. So, I've been dreaming about it for a long time. And it was something I've always, prayed for, but you just don't know, right? Until you actually, kind of get through life and figure out that, yeah, wife and kids are in the cards, and that, she's on board with the same things you're on board with, and all that fun stuff. But once it finally came to fruition, man, I've been blessed to connect with like-minded people on pretty much all fronts of my life, and the outdoors kind of being at one of the centers of that.
Yeah. I used to work in film, where it's very cutthroat, and people would throw you to the curb. But when I started doing this, it definitely feels more like a community.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so well put. It really is. It should, right? It should feel like a family, like an outdoor. You ever? I don't know how many of you out there. I'm sure if you're a hunting fan, you've probably come across Michael Waddell. No matter whatever you might think of him, if you love, hate, or whatever, he's always talking about that Brotherhood. And he was like one of the first guys I remember growing up watching on the Outdoor Channel. I consumed so much outdoor content, like I said, because I didn't grow up, naturally a country boy that had, a dad and a grandpa and an uncle, you know what I mean? Like a whole family of hunters. I grew up more kind of educating myself on it, and doing that through a lot of people. Yeah. Like Michael Waddell on TV. And I just remember from a young age, he'd always talk about the Brotherhood. And then you begin to see that, right? As you, like you said, you come into this thing, and you meet more and more outdoorsmen and women, and you realize that at its best and at its core, it really is. It's a family.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely feels like that. And I like that, using that term family to describe it. So speaking of which, when you have you started introducing your kids to things?
In little bits. So I'm in toddler stage right now, and all you parents out there, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
I probably say no more, right? Even if you're not a parent, you know how toddlers are. So yeah. I actually my son, his name is Drake. He will be 4 at the end of January here. So he's just like starting to kind of, get his feet under him and really be interested in that kind of stuff. He's an outside kid though, always has been. And like I said, having the family farm that I've actually kind of moved away from now by default when I met my wife, pulled me about 2 hours and maybe a little change away from that area. But I've still, since Drake was about 2 years old, probably even inside of 2 years old, he made his first trip down with me to the farm, just probably in a baby carrier, riding around in the truck. And then, he's been with me out putting permission, looking for permission for landowners up in the part of the state of Ohio where I'm at now. When he was not even a year old, I think I was looking for spots and out putting flyers in people's doors and knocking on doors, and he was with me. So it's really, it's been like an unspoken bond. They're just starting to get their words. And my daughter she just turned 2 in October. And she's the one that's like, she's a chatterbox. She's talking all the time about daddy and the deer and all these things. And they definitely know exactly what it is. And they've been with me out to my hunting lease that I've got in my neighborhood here, not too far. And I just have been slowly but surely integrating them with the little things, riding along on the side-by-side, coming out to help put up a trail camera, and Drake will come out and collect a handful of acorns and rocks and all that fun stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's just slowly building into, hopefully, a lifelong love of the outdoors. Like, you and I have picked up.
Yeah. Very cool. What about fishing?
Fishing. Yeah. I actually, funny enough story, before I like relaunched my YouTube channel after a few years of really going hard at it just this fall. And the last few videos I had filmed were with my son Drake. And I did some GoPro fishing videos here on Lake Erie, just a local spot that some bass were hanging out at. And I brought him along with me with the GoPro, and he's like in a stroller, not even a year old again, like just out there hanging out. And now he's got his own rod, his own tackle box. My daughter just got her own first little Barbie rod. So they're like on the front end of all that stuff, right? Where they're hopefully, I've got sites set in 2025 of getting them. I've got some good local ponds and stuff, and we're going to try and get them over there, even if it's for 5-10 minutes, get them out there, let them throw a bobber in the water and just start to experience that stuff. And it's so fun. I look forward to it more than I can put into words, for sure.
Yeah. So you've brought up the private land thing a couple of times. What's that as far as living in Ohio, or if there's anything anywhere surrounding as well that you might be aware of? What's that culture like? What's that kind of need that hunters have there?
Oh man. Well, that could be a whole podcast, because it's like, it's the bread and butter of hunting now. And I guess I didn't realize that. I kind of took it for granted, honestly, man. Like I said, from the time I was about 14 or 15, I was at no place more than my family farm that my aunt and uncle have and still have today. And I was just down there at the holidays, just poking around and sighting in my deer rifle and stuff. And I was blessed, but kind of spoiled with that growing up, to the point where I didn't realize just how much of a premium there is on private hunting land across the country. Like you mentioned, you can go regionally, anywhere in the Midwest, anywhere. I mean, certainly East Coast, it's not any easier. I don't know anywhere where it is exactly easy to just to find spots, period, that will even give you a chance to yield some success results. Better yet, state like Ohio, for instance, where I'm at, you've got over-the-counter license sales and tag sales. So anybody out there, if you want to spend a little bit of money, and it's really not an outrageous amount of money, you can come here and I think the photos on online have spoken for themselves. Ohio has put out some absolute giants. I mean, just over the course of history, but lately there have been some monsters taken out of, I mean, just about every region of the state. I just had one in my county, literally 5 minutes from my hunting lease, where a guy took one over 250 inches this year. And it's going to go down in the top, I think top 7 or 8 of all time Ohio non-typicals. So
I imagine
it's that publicity has really sparked a fire here. And now you have just, on top of the fact that there are already a lot of outdoorsmen in Ohio in general, right? It's a pretty outdoor friendly state. And now you've got the out of state influence coming in, and people are coming in and dropping a lot of money on hunting leases and buying up property and just trying to get permission. All these things. It's a big competition for spots, and people are clinging to those 10-acre spots, 20 acres, 40, 50. It's a whole game inside of the game that, I mean, we could talk forever about it because it's crucial. And I feel like more people now than ever before are like super tuned into that. They're like that's what they're worried about before they're thinking of hunting tactics and how they hang their stands or what they're using, bow or gun wise, whatever. They are honing in on that pursuit of land. It's really incredible.
Yeah. Are there no like national forests or anything like that in Ohio?
There are. Yeah, there definitely are. It's just, and there are some big ones. I don't want to, underscore the fact that, I mean, there are some big, public, state ground areas where you could come and you can give yourself a fair shot. I mean, people do it every year. I have a ton of respect for anybody who comes and does that, whether it's whitetails, turkeys, whatever you're after. It can be done, but it's just, it is. I feel like it's a little bit more sparse in this area. And there is a lot of private land ownership in the state of Ohio. I feel like, I don't know the numbers. I can't give a figure right off the top of my head to say that it's any more than whatever given state you may be listening or watching from. But I can tell you right now, from the experience of doing it, there's a lot of land, and some of the best spots are in private hands here in the state of Ohio for sure.
There was another podcast I was listening to earlier today, and the guy was mentioning that he grew up on private, but got to the point where he would just identify it as a place that deer passed through. And then when he went to public, he knew the deer lived there because there was such a wide span that they had to be somewhere there. Yeah. Is there private that's just that big that the deer could be living there?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like I said, I mean, the private I grew up on, I'll say, like, didn't live there, but you know what I mean? I grew up hunting on was about 100 acres. So, I mean, not massive when you're talking public land, but, private land. Hey, I would take 90 acres if somebody wants to hand that to me. I'm sure you would do the same, right? Like, it's a pretty good sized chunk of land, right?
Yeah.
And that's, there's some in this area. My brother-in-law and I were just talking about a farmer that's a little south of here that has like 6,000 some acres, he told me, and he was maybe interested in starting to parcel it out for leases and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, those are pretty mind-blowing numbers in the state of Ohio. But I could definitely see kind of to what you're talking about. It is parsed up quite a bit for the most part, where like that 100 acre farm is like a sweet spot. That's a larger farm, a larger tract of land in most parts of the state of Ohio. My area a little bit now. See, I'm like in the north central area of Ohio. It's starting to spread out, and you're getting more like Midwest farm country, right? So you've got your farmers, those legacy farms where a few hundred acres isn't unheard of, but a lot of those tight areas that us hunters want to be in, those river bottom areas, those rich agricultural zones that kind of meet with those funnels and land kind of topo changes and all that fun stuff. They're chopped up between several smaller properties versus, a guy that's got 500 acres and everything's happening on that piece of land. So it's actually funny enough that you say that because, Now I luck out with my hunting lease, but I border up against what is public access land, but it's non-huntable public access land. So and that's exactly what happens. The deer kind of almost know that, and they traverse through it, they bed on it, and then they'll come out and, obviously make their way onto the private at other times. But it's a whole ball game within the ball game, and it's interesting because it's pretty parsed up in states like Ohio, Michigan, PA, even I think, and Kentucky to an extent. That Midwest range, it can be tricky.
Yeah. Those 2 years I was telling you about for the turkey, the only times I ever did see turkey is they would be standing on the side of the road just staring at me, or going across someone else's property.
Isn't that always how it works?
Yeah, they know.
Yes. Oh, especially those turkeys, man. And I'm glad you're a turkey hunter too, because I talk to a lot of people, and it's like, I feel like turkeys are a little bit of a lesser known thing, even in like my area that I live in now. Like I said, heading more towards the west central portion of the state of Ohio. I know now a lot of guys that are all waterfowlers, and I'm like, I didn't know anybody really, but maybe a couple of buddies that I barely knew growing up that maybe had waterfowled a little here or there. And most everyone where I grew up, they were whitetail hunters and they were turkey hunters. And people don't have a true appreciation for just how smart turkeys actually are, even as goofy as they are. Like you said, yes, they will be crossing in front of your truck one moment and then literally picking you off in full camo in a bush on the side of a field the next. There's no rhyme or reason to their game, but they are tough. Yeah, they're definitely a challenge. And that, I think, probably the most, I'm going to say similar to deer, but like you could probably like lump like elk and things like that in moose, because you're calling them in essentially. Yes. Yes.
And I don't know if there's any other fowl that actually does that.
It's unique, man. They are a unique bird. And that's something I always, anytime I meet somebody that hasn't quite dipped their toe into the turkey hunting water, I'm like, you got to get out there. You got to get an authentic experience in it one time. And that was my experience. Like I said, when I was a freshman in high school, and I was out there just shadowing my cousin, and it just grabbed a hold of me and never let go. And that was what did it. It wasn't so much the deer hunt was fun, right? And it felt like really tradition rich. You feel like you're it's almost an American rite of passage to get out there and hunt whitetails. I feel like it's our national pastime, if you will, if there is one, when it comes to the outdoors. Mm-hmm. But when I got out there and turkey hunted, I'm like, who's been hiding this stuff? You don't see it on the outdoor channel as much. I didn't grow up knowing anybody in my family or friend group or anybody else that was like a true blue, cut their teeth on turkey hunting. And then once I got out there and got a taste of it, I'm like, I can't get enough of this stuff. Like I need more than just 1 month in Ohio in the month of April and May. It locked me up.
Yeah, that's good. That's the same problem I have down in North Carolina. I think it's even less than a month.
Oh, I know.
But we had in California, I had a fall season and a spring season, and they were several months long. So I didn't know it at the time, but I had it good when it came to turkey hunting.
Right.
Not that it helped because I couldn't find them.
I mean, hey, that's a luxury though. I mean, because even some bad days turkey hunting, I feel like are better than some of the days that I've gone home with a deer in the back of the truck. And that might sound crazy, but like, I mean, some of my favorite turkey hunts, maybe didn't amount with a bird. And it was just that action, that chess match, hearing them, getting close, kind of, doing that whole back and forth, that chess match with them. It can be just as fun. So yeah, I didn't realize that's pretty neat, man. Out there in California, they give you a few more weeks and months out of the year to chase those things.
For California being what it is, it's surprising what's available and what they allow. Like that the ram that I have here, that was from California.
That's awesome. That's cool, man. So yeah, there's a little bit of that more exotic aspect mixed in out there. That's awesome.
There's a little bit of that in Texas too. And I have some family there that I've been invited out by an uncle, and I need to take him up on that at some point. They're expensive hunts though.
Oh, I can only imagine, right? That's the part nobody really talks about, right? You know, and that's my wife always makes this comment. She's like, when I met you, or heard of, you know, obviously, yeah, my brother-in-law is an outdoorsman too. She's like, I always thought you guys got like all of this free, fresh, wild meat and fresh fish. Like, where did all these costs come in? And I'm like, oh, but that's the part that people leave out, right? Is there's a cost to all of it, and it can be steep. And yeah, the more exotic you get, the more rare you get, the further away from civilization that you do have to go get something. Oh yeah, it costs. She understands that part now all too well. Every time she looks at our bank account, something else is coming out hunting related, and I hear about it. So you guys out there, you married guys know how it goes for sure.
If only you could put planes on Cabela cards.
Exactly right. That's a great one.
Yeah. I guess that's why you need to have, if you're going to have those kind of adventures, you need to be able to relay the stories in a way that maybe allow some kind of financial recoup. So like doing this podcast hopefully turns into something at some point for both of us.
Yeah, exactly, man. That you're preaching there for sure. That's just it, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, man, I can't say I've ever looked back and been like, man, I really regret. I mean, my wife would probably argue with that, but I can't say I've ever made like a hunting related purchase where I'm like, that was really stupid. I don't feel too good about that. Like it's some point, like you said, one way or the other, whether it physically pays off or you just in the experience, it pays off. I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, that
it all feels good.
It all feels good in the end, in due time, right? When you get out there and you're out enjoying the outdoors, it has a way of cleansing the palate, I guess I would say.
Yeah. I think most of my recent purchases, moving to a state where it actually gets pretty cold, at the end of every hunting season since I've been here, I buy another piece of warm clothing.
Oh yeah. I'm in the middle of the cold, right here in Ohio. It one of the colder states, I guess. I mean, certainly some of you out there have it worse than us, but yeah, I find myself every year, no amount of garments is ever the right amount. Like you just have to find that next warm piece, and that's something else. All the wives out there are constantly hitting you over the knuckles on, right? I thought you had, bibs for when it drops below 20, and no, honey, I need another pair. Mine wore out, whatever it may be, right? Like there's always that next piece of cold weather gear and or something that just ever so slightly gives you that upgrade and staying warm. It's worth it.
Yeah. I've tried the the electric socks.
Oh,
but I don't care for them too much because they seem to burn my skin, even when I double layer them. Yes.
Oh man, I've had more pairs that I've had issues with than ones that I haven't, if that makes sense in the way I put it. I've had the same experience. Yeah, they either get so hot they're going to melt your feet off, or the batteries clunk out and fall on their face in an hour. Or yes, they don't get warm enough nearly at all. And it's just like that's the other thing, right? The wife's always like, wait, I thought you got a pair of, electric socks. Well, they weren't great. So I have to keep, trial and erring, new pairs. Yeah. And my thing this year that I found, I guess a hot tip, it's not that hot, but electric hand warmers in a state like Ohio. I don't know, for some reason I get the coldest hands. Those have been a hit for me. I've had good success with the
if I have them on so I took them fishing a couple of weeks ago.
Good. Yeah.
It was the temperature where the water was warmer than the air.
Yep.
So if I have it on the lowest setting, I can put it on my bare hand. And if I have it on the top setting, I can handle it if I'm wearing a glove and I don't directly put it on the glove. But kind of the same problem with the sock. And with the sock, though, is it's in your boot and you can't pull it away.
Yes. There's no escaping it. And then, you've inevitably, whatever, you're especially when you get into the really, really cold stuff, you throw another sock on, or you've got, a layer of long johns over the top. And it's like, you're digging through your boots to try and make sure that you've got, you can turn those things off before they give you
Right.
third degree burns. I've experienced all of it, man. It's all part of that. People don't realize how physically demanding really it is. They think of us as hunters and outdoorsmen and women, right? We go and we just sit in a blind, or we sit in a tree stand. It can't be that hard. Yeah, it's a little cold, but you got your bibs and your coveralls and all that, and it should just be that simple. It's like, no, maybe when you're talking about putting in hours and days and weeks and months into, sitting out there, it's it's a whole different game within the game. Another one of those games within the game, I guess.
Yeah. Have you tried putting I don't entirely know what they're made out of, but the little hand warmers you can get at the store, there's like a chemical reaction with the air. So I'll shove those in the toes.
The hot hands. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, for years I've traveled around from like October through February in the state of Ohio here with a thing of hot hands, like the supersized one you can get at Costco or Sam's Club. And those can be a lifesaver for sure. I think they even make like the toe warmers now. You can get the ones
I saw that
for
this
in
year.
your shoes that are a little more low profile. And I mean, there's a million and one workarounds now. Now you see guys wearing like electric garments out there, the heated garments, the heated vests, heated coats and stuff. Like, who knows what it'll look like by the time our kids and ourselves, we grow older and get into this stuff. At some point we'll be out there in like spacesuits, maybe, warm and toasty.
Just walking around as Iron Man. Just a little bow and arrow on the arm.
Right. Something like that. That's what all the old timers have warned us about for all these years, probably.
Yeah.
It'll come.
We got a suit like that. You could probably have a higher, what am I thinking of? The bow pound.
Oh yeah, the drawback.
Yeah. So you go to like the 300 or something like that.
Bionic you're not drawback.
Yeah.
Now you might be onto something there. You might want to clip that part out and keep it confidential.
To me, I've had a crossbow explode on me when I was at a cabin with a couple of guys. To be fair, we didn't know what we were doing. Decided to dry fire it, and we realized that was a mistake. But I'm a little going outside of the norm on things like that. I'm a little paranoid about. So if someone wants to make a crazy bow like that, then they can go for it.
Hey, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. We all have those horror stories somewhere, right? I had the same thing with, I grew up using I wish I had a picture of it, or I should get it from my dad. I'm sure at his house somewhere. It was an old recurve crossbow. It looked like it was right out of the medieval days. It was an old recurve, and my cousin and I, again, were experimenting and learning how to archery game work with this thing in the backyard. And I can remember that string popping off 100 times a week, and we'd have to try and get it on ourselves. And if we couldn't, we'd be going up to the local Gander Mountain and getting the archery guy in the archery shop to go fix that thing. And those are, oh my gosh, man, I can remember that. That's a funny thing you mentioned with the crossbow exploding. I think we've all got those experiences somewhere in the bag, right?
Yeah. So one guy actually, I found out not then, but like a year later, that a piece bounced off the wall and hit him right below the eye.
Whoa.
And I was like, because it was me and another guy trying to figure out how to fire it. And I just felt so bad. It was a year later, but I'm like, I owe this guy something.
Yeah. That's one of those, man, where it's like, you look back on it and you're like, how did it not, thank God, how did it not go worse? Right.
Yeah. No, luckily none of us were actually, other than him being cut a little bit, none of us were like really harmed.
Right. Didn't lose an eye. That's a positive.
I wanted to ask, with you hunting in the cold, do you have a much experience hunting in snow?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. That's my favorite stuff. That's my favorite. So I just a couple weeks ago, actually, that was one of my last, it was my last hunt now that I think of it. It's been slow. I tagged out pretty early here
Yeah.
in November, and I had a couple doe tags that I filled during Ohio's gun season. That was the last hunt that I took, was a snow hunt. And I look forward to that more than anything. It's like just the scenery and the feel. If you've been out in the snow, you know how it's like extra serene, and the calm kind of like it feels like you're the only person out there in the world when it's like that. And it's special for sure. So yeah, I've gotten a few snow hunts in my day, no doubt. And Ohio tends to bless us with those opportunities, especially the further you go north in the state, like I am now. Now, where I grew up, we would get a couple hunts a year, where it would snow pretty good, and you might get down that day, you might get out, a couple days later, and it's cool, and it makes tracking and all that fun stuff a little easier. But now that I am up here on mighty Lake Erie, we get blessed every once and again with what they call lake effect snow. And if you know anything about lake effect snow, it is unpredictable, and it will dump sometimes, inches to feet on a given area, and it can be crazy. So yeah, I love that stuff. I love getting out and hunting in the white stuff. It's always a good time.
Yeah. Do you normally tag out every year?
I have the last few. I've been really lucky. So yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up that way. That's for sure. So I definitely didn't grow up that way in the part of the state that I'm from. I definitely ate tag soup a few years of my life, and really had kind of the blessing and curse again of that private land, that farm being in the family, and me being the only one that really hunted it, along with getting my dad back out there hunting with me after some years that he never got out there. I kind of fell into that trap of like, all right, well, I'm going to start passing deer. And it taught me much more than I could have, learned by tagging out on a smaller, 2-year-old or a spike or something every year. I learned a lot more about hunting and patience and all those good things, and got taught a lot of hard lessons growing up hunting that way. So I'm grateful for it. But there's definitely a few years there in my life and into my adult life where, I didn't punch certainly not an antler deer tag, not a buck tag, and maybe just a couple of does. Some years, maybe one doe. And it can be tough, even in these states like Ohio. I know every time I talk to people from around the country, right, they're like, oh my gosh, so you tag like a booner every year, you tag a giant, one of these Ohio giants every year, and just have like this mecca of amazing Ohio deer hunting experiences. And it's like, no, even within the state of Ohio or Iowa or Illinois, go to any of your Kansas big buck states where you see these giants go down on television on these shows, and not everybody gets the same level of experience. And us outdoorsmen, right, we all kind of realize that. But I've been blessed in the area that I guess God's kind of led me to in my life. It's pretty rich on whitetails, and we've got a pretty good subspecies of Ohio whitetails here that are just nice corn-fed Midwestern deer. So I've been blessed the last few years for sure.
Yeah. When you like this year, do you usually hunt the same location, or do you find going around helps?
It's been a little mix of both. So I was lucky enough. I looked around only for, and I mentioned it just briefly there about, me and my little guy, Drake, going out when he was really young. We happened to cross a landowner that was one of the few that's really gracious and really nice, and was willing to give me a shot. And this is over 4 years ago now, 4.5 years ago. But he had other hunters on the property, long story. And, basically gave me that kind of, okay, come back after Thanksgiving and you'll have a spot and you can try and fill that late tag. So I grew up, in this area. I shouldn't say grew up, but you know what I mean? Like I started out in this general area of where I'm at now on this property, sharing it with a few guys, had a little success, got a buck my second year there. And then kind of realized, saw the writing on the wall. I'm like, this guy's the best landowner I could have imagined, working with. but he's letting everybody else hunt too. There's 5 neighbors. My brother-in-law and I are kind of a tag team. I like to try and get him out there with me. And then my nephew just came of age in the last few years to start hunting with us as well. Right. So like, I really need to find a spot that we can call our own. So I was really blessed. Starting in the 23 season, I found a landowner locally. Actually, funny enough, if we have just a second to divert and talk about kind of a permission tactic, I sent letters. I actually looked up parcel information, who owned a specific parcel in our area. I got on a mapping service and literally just dropped pins on, okay, that looks like a good spot, and found their addresses, sent letters, and got a bite from a guy that couldn't have been more nice, couldn't have been more pleasant to work with. And so, yeah, he's like, let's do a lease agreement. So I kind of fell into that. And you go into it not knowing exactly what if what you saw on a map on an app is going to correlate to what you think it will. Now, I obviously had like a general understanding of this area, and I knew that there should be some really good deer at this place, but I just happened to luck out and got a really great spot. That's a travel corridor during the rut and has amazing timber in one spot. And man, it's a money spot once November comes around. So I feel like everyone kind of has those stories, at least around here, where it's like, if you find a good spot, you obviously, anywhere in the world, you try and stick with it and do the right things to keep coming back year after year. But, until it shows itself in a different light and doesn't yield success, I'm one of those guys where I'm like, I'm locking in and I want to figure out that property to the highest degree that I can. And just try to make that success repetitive year on year.
Yeah. Kind of sounds like the property I've been hunting. There's right against the backside of the forest, there's a lake, and the deer, just like last year, there was like tons of doe just going through.
Yeah.
And I took it a little bit for granted, because this year I'm like, I'm just going to tag out all my doe, get that over with, and then I'll focus on a buck. Not a single doe showed up, and I'm like, what happened? I don't understand. We think so. Right after Christmas, I get a text from the rancher's wife saying, has there been any strange activity on my deer the trail camera?
Oh yeah.
And I was like, there's been a couple of random people. I just thought they were doing like a college program where the students would come in and raise chickens, and then they would raise them in a facility, and they were doing like a comparison thing.
Yeah.
So they look like teenagers. So I just assumed that was associated. So I was like, sure, I'll send you some of the screenshots. And I'm looking through it, and I'm like, okay, I know that this gator going through, that's the owner. And then a couple of them were a golf cart, and I'm like, how did I not see that before? I just must have looked at it. Yeah, I looked at it from the assorted view, so you just see kind of a wide, like a mini of all the pictures. And I must have just assumed that it was the gator every time, but no, it was just a random golf cart going through. So after I send them that, they ended up putting up a fence on the end to stop that from happening. But we're wondering if they were just scaring deer away, and that's why nothing was showing up this year. I was out there tonight. It was extremely quiet, other than the cattle.
Yeah. Hey, they'll definitely keep you company, right? No, I mean, that's it. That the smallest, and maybe it's not even a very small change, right? Like, I mean, for all any of us know, I've dealt with those issues. When I first started down at the family farm I've been talking about, there was legitimate like poaching, like out of hunting season. A neighbor was just opening up fair game with a rifle out the back door, and things like that are just little pressure things that to us seem like pretty consequential, not non-consequential, and here or there are huge for deer. And that would make complete sense, man. And that's always frustrating too, right? Like, you go in, you think you've got the book. I felt the same way, honestly, with my spot this year. In year 2 going in, I'm like, same thing. I'm thinking, I'm going to bring the camera out with me to the field, start filming these hunts. We're going to get a couple of really awesome shots of some does. I'm going to punch, two early antlerless permits, and then I'm ready to rock and roll in October, November, when the big boys start moving in Ohio.
Yeah.
And sure enough, for whatever reason, my situation, maybe I didn't, I don't think I had any external circumstances, external trespassing or anything going on. It was just a weird kind of start to the season, honestly. But it's so funny how that tends to be the case, where you think the hay's in the barn and everything's in the bag. And then those deer, man, they have a way of adjusting, don't they?
Yeah. They wise up to something that's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. In a heartbeat.
I'm sure if I was taking a bunch of does in one spot, though, they'd be like, wait a minute. Where did that one go?
That's it. Exactly. I mean, that's the other part too, is we tend to leave ourselves out of the equation, right? When we're talking about pressure and hunting, and, as hunters, we're there and we're trying, I feel like the vast majority of us, right, are trying to do the right thing and follow the rules. And most of us love the animals we pursue more than anyone could, right? As hunters, we love those animals the most. And we don't realize, the amount of pressure inherently that our passion for being there, it puts on those deer, and especially smart deer. Like if you're looking for that upper crust of deer, the ones that we all dream about, like they're really darn smart and they really put things together quick. Like you said, I mean, yeah, if there's a certain area and, they keep seeing or hanging around and hearing, gunshots, or even, seeing people coming and going on a gator or something, like you said, like pulling a deer out or whatever it could be on your spot, those little incursions into their zone, they definitely, they keep notes without having to keep notes.
Yeah. Have your kids had any, I'm assuming that there might be some kind of interest in whitetail. Is there anything like outside of that they're interested in, like a bucket list hunt or something like that? Is it too early
see, they're at such a young age where it's like they're fixated on what I'm fixated on, and obviously around here it's deer, so that's all they're worried about now. Yeah. They're very, like I said, very young, super beginning stages of all that stuff. But like, especially my daughter Blakely, like she's really, like I said, she's the chatterbox of the family, and she's always, if I've got a deer show on, she's now, she calls it a big a buck. That's a big a buck, like they're hyper fixated on that stuff, because I am. I guess I'm the one that curates the bucket list. I've got all these things that I want to do in hunting, and I'm hoping those things wear off on them. And from kind of a secondary standpoint, I've gotten to hunt a lot with my nephew, who's also a youth hunter, and he's going to turn 12 in like a week, which I can't even believe. And him and I just went out this year, and I'll make a shameless plug for my YouTube channel. If anyone wants to check out a really cool youth hunt, we published an amazing hunt there called The Story of Tank this year. In the middle of November, he dropped this old, gnarly, rutted up Ohio buck that's like probably 6.5-year-old deer, if I had to guess, like a really solid deer. So I've kind of been living the youth bucket list through him more than my kids, because like I said, my kids are just getting their feet wet in it. But oh my gosh, he's always telling me and my brother-in-law, oh man, I want to go get this, I want to go get that. He's starting from the top. He thinks he's going to be a regular safari guy one of these days.
So what about like fishing, or is it just kind of the enjoyment in general for them, or even yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. At this stage, it's really just the enjoyment of going out. And like I said, the most we've really gotten into is kind of, a little bit of bass action when Drake was still too little to even know what was going on. And then a little bit of pond stuff, and I foresee that's kind of what this summer will look like. Got a small pond that's closed. It's loaded with monster bluegill. Definitely want to hit that with them. And then another little bass pond that's down the road, just those small quick hitting trips that they can still keep that interest level. And really, and like I mentioned, my nephew Colton, he's at that age now where he likes coming out and doing the big boy fishing a little bit. So he'll go out on charters with us on Lake Erie for the walleye. And I've got a niece, Madison, who's 8 years old, and she's more of a fisherwoman. She hasn't made it out to hunt yet. So I'm kind of, I guess I'm getting a sample of what to expect with my boy and my girl through my niece and nephew. So it's really cool. Very helpful for me, you know, as a dad, to kind of almost feel like I'm getting a trial and test run in it. And, you know, what we've done is a lot of those family, you know, bobber and a worm, go out to a local farm pond, go hit the bluegill, go hit, you know, some small bass, things like that, where all the kids can be involved and they can keep it fun, but it's not like, hey, we're out on, you know, a boat right now, halfway across Lake Erie. Like if you want your tablet, you can't have it. If you want to go home and take a nap, you can't do it. Right. So we try to just give them that little nibble and taste as they keep going. And the first one to kind of graduate the course, if you will, is my nephew Colton. He's graduated on up and he went out on his first charter with us last year and hit Lake Erie. So he's upward and onward doing the big guy stuff now.
Yeah. Are those multiple days or just like hour?
Usually just a whole day. Well, we usually just do a 1 day and that keeps it, even for us, fully grown kids, I'll call us, you know, where it's like, man, it's a chore and it beats you up a little bit some of these days, especially, you know, you go out of Lake Erie in the early spring, man, you better pack a lunch and be ready, because you can definitely spend some hours bobbing away and feeling those a little bit of what it's like to be out on sea a little bit. So it's usually about a day, and that's a good sweet spot for those of us that are fully grown kids and the little kids.
Yeah. I love charters. That's usually what I try to do when I go to California. Always
cool, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. It just gets you a different experience. It's super fun.
Yeah. And the crews that I've had experience with, they're always great with kids. My son ended up catching the most on the boat because the deckhand kept catching it and handing the rod to my son.
That's the best, man. Yeah. And see, those things, I'm sure he'll never forget that, right? Like that creates a lifelong, you know, core memory. It's been our experience, same thing too, up here on Erie. It's been very much like, they see a kid and their eyes light up. And that's, again, that's that family, that brotherhood aspect of the outdoors, whether it's fishing or hunting. I feel like people see that and they're excited. They're ready to, you know, make that kid have a day of a lifetime. And that's the way it should be, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. The attention span's pretty hard to deal with too, though. Cause like I'll go to a lake out here, that's known for like bass and catfish. Yeah. And we use, I've tried using lures and because it's a little more action for him, but for the most part, we just use like something on a bobber.
Sure.
But he gets bored pretty quickly and then just wants to play with the trolling motor and go around the lake. So what I'm going to try this next summer, I'm getting the, I always forget what they're called, but it's the extra arm that sends down a cannonball and it's got the little release clip.
Yeah.
So you can go to a certain depth. Yes. And then I'm just going to say, all right, rods are in the water, troll. And then I'll hand you the rod as soon as the fish bites.
That's an amazing idea. See, that's a veteran dad move right there. You know, veteran dad move. Just you kind of have to adapt, right? Like I've learned that in, like I said, kind of getting this kind of crash course with my niece and nephew in the outdoors before mine are really truly able to embrace it. And it's like, man, those little dad adaptations or mom adaptations, they are lifesavers for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's you can justify the outdoor cost if it involves the kids.
That's right. Yeah, another trip to Cabela's, Bass Pro. You know, it's you got to do it. It's the kids, right?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So going into the faith side of things, where would you say you see God in the great outdoors?
Everywhere I look, man. It's just it's the most special part of the outdoors for me. And I think I mentioned it in like a reel or something that I made at the beginning of this season, man. It is where I find God. I feel like it is where I found God in my life. I grew up the child of parents who grew up in the Catholic Church, actually. My mom was in Catholic schools growing up. My dad, I'm if you can't tell, Campanelli is not exactly an Irish last name. It's a pretty strong Italian family, right? Mm-hmm. So my dad grew up Italian family in the Catholic Church as well. And we always had like an understanding of faith and of the Catholic in general, Christian kind of values, right? Growing up, but not to the point where maybe to the point of my parents, where they were in Sunday school and in Catholic schools. And my grandfather was a graduate of the University of Notre Dame. Like they just a very, we kind of had a more, I would say, and I don't want to make it sound negative, but a watered down kind of outlook on it, where my parents didn't overly push it on us, but it was a belief system and an understanding. And then I really feel like my belief system was emboldened and strengthened, and at least my comfort in expressing it was when I found the outdoors. And I kind of credit that to a lot of, the guys I saw growing up on TV that weren't afraid to speak about their faith and weren't afraid to call it for what it is with God's creation, and thanking God for every hunt, whether it was a successful hunt, so to speak, filling a tag, or whether it was just a beautiful sunrise or sunset. Those lessons at the age of 14 to 15 really lit me on fire. I would say in a spiritual way, to where I was like, okay, I'm actually experiencing this in the outdoors. I can feel this. I feel a spiritual presence in the outdoors. I feel connected to a higher power and a higher source when I'm out here. And that's really, I credit the outdoors 100% with connecting me first with people that are of a strong faith. My wife, my brother-in-law is probably the strongest man of faith that I personally know. And he's been a huge blessing in my life. And that's like I said, a relationship built in the outdoors. And I've got the outdoors to thank for a much better relationship with God and my faith, no doubt.
Yeah. I want to remember one of the first times that I felt like I was having a conversation with God. I was at it was a church camp, and we were camping down in the Grand Canyon. But then a storm came and it started flooding, so we had to go to a local church that let us stay there. And I just walked outside during the night, sat on a rock that was probably that big, and just looked up at the stars. And that's kind of like the first time I remember like having an actual like not just a prayer, but like a conversational prayer with God.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I mean, it has to. I feel like it almost has to speak to you when you're out there. You've got no choice but to have that feeling, right? That you are in. That's a great way to put it. It's almost a conversation that is greater than what we can maybe see and even feel at times. But I feel like outdoorsmen, if you're an outdoorsman or an outdoors woman, you know what we're talking about. That's a great way to put it, man. And whether it's a sunrise in the woods or on the water, or watching the stars in a field, or like you mentioned there, just you can't help but be in awe and feel a connection to something greater than us. And I attribute it all to the Lord, and that's been a huge benefit of the outdoors for me, is just growing that faith and relationship with God, no doubt.
Yeah, there was something about doing this podcast too that I felt was because there was a couple different directions that I could have gone, because I wanted to start a podcast. I was even considering doing like a political one, and this was the only one that I felt like God was like, nope, forget everything else. I don't even want you working on other things. I don't care if it's a podcast or not. Do this.
I love that.
So I'm hoping that this turns into something that at the very least can help inspire other people that listen to different testimonial stories from people like yourself.
Amen, man. No, I credit you to the highest degree, man. With number one, it takes courage, right? In our, let's face it, in the society and the world we live in now, it takes some courage to step up and speak out about how you feel in your faith, in the outdoors, even, right? Like we've all seen there's an inherent kind of negativity that a lot of people draw with what we like to do in the outdoors, is especially the hunting side of things, right? That always draws some kind of controversy. Like, hey, hats off to you for combining the two and then pushing that out there in a positive message. It's much needed, I think, in our just in our community, in our hunting community. And I have a special connection to that because, like I said, I came from a place of belief, no doubt, and of, Christian values, no doubt, growing up. But I wouldn't say that I was very comfortable in voicing that to other people when I was just a football, baseball player, a regular kid, so to speak. It was once I really got in the outdoors, I thought, seeing how comfortable most outdoorsmen, I felt like most outdoorsmen had some relationship with faith, and it made me feel comfortable. Like, hey, I'm allowed to express that, and I'm allowed to share that with people, and man, that's powerful. So that's so cool, and I think it's much needed because there's always that person out there, I feel like, that was maybe in my shoes, or certainly could be in even further place from being comfortable expressing that and vouching for faith, that might need that extra little bit of encouragement. And man, yeah, I think finding it on your show is a great place to begin. That's cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's and kind of going back to the whole brotherhood or family aspect, where it's very easy to share and discuss these things. Back when I worked in LA, I felt like I needed to hide it.
Oh my gosh.
It by doing so kind of pushed me into my own negative rabbit hole.
Sure.
And when at the very end, I don't remember what specifically, I was getting married at the time, so maybe it was just me wanting to kind of reawaken myself. And
Sure.
then I started basically being more open about my faith, and people started cutting me off. And that's kind of when I separated myself, but I was probably at the same time somewhat being pushed out of the Hollywood scene.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. One of the things that's true that a lot of people find out by going to church when they're new to the faith is there's a lot of persecution involved.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily going to be easy, but the rewards are very great.
That's well put, man. Very well put. Because I mean, yeah, that's something for sure, and I guess I'll kind of play off of that even a little bit. I feel like outdoorsmen, at least from my outdoor journey. Now, if you grew up, a country boy or girl, and everyone in your community was an outdoorsman and a hunter and embraced that lifestyle, man, number one, I envy you. Number two, maybe you won't quite get it from the same place that I'm about to say this from, but I feel like I related to what you just said and thought about myself in an outdoor regard too, because I can remember, the persecution word is kind of a strong, a good word for what I kind of remember feeling when I first told all my buddies on my baseball team and my football team that I'm like, you know what? I don't want to come to practice anymore. I want to start deer hunting. I want to start fishing. I want to start turkey hunting. I can remember, like that cutoff feeling, like you're explaining. I remember them being like, and they, young kids, if they throw out the derogatory, what are you some kind of hillbilly, you're going to be what kind of hill jack, move is that, whatever it was. And I just remember, it didn't really bother me, but then you hear those things and you feel those things and you kind of feel that push and that negative energy when you, kind of speak your truth, whatever your truth is, whether it's a faith truth or it's the outdoors. Whenever you speak your true self to people, there's always going to be somebody that's probably disgruntled, right? Even when it is a purely positive thing, right? From you and I, I think of faith, and like I said, I commend you greatly for expressing that and moving in the direction of your faith. I think that takes an incredible, strong person and a powerful person. And from an outdoor perspective, I remember feeling that before I felt the whole faith side of things. I remember feeling like, man, I'm really kind of out on an island here, at least in my little suburban community, deciding to go do all this stuff. I hope it works out. And then, I feel like a couple years into it, I'm like, man, I feel like I got pushed into this by somebody else. Who could that be? Right. I think we've all found ourselves in that place where I'm like, I catch myself doing it all the time nowadays, where I'm like, man, I sit here and I look at 2 kids, soon to be 3, a wife, a home, all these things that we are blessed with. And I just sit back and look at it and I'm like, man, someone was plotting my steps. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just following a passion. I just wanted to, go and shoot targets. I just wanted to go and deer hunt. I wanted to turkey hunt. I wanted to fish. And all of a sudden I look up and I find myself and I'm like, man, this sure feels like somebody was pushing me in this direction. I think we all know who for sure.
Mm-hmm. So what pushed you into starting a podcast?
It's an interesting background, honestly, man. So this version of the podcast is truly just like, what people see now with what I'm doing. The BaseCamp Podcast is truly just me looking for a place to connect with more people, just like I connected with you, just like I connected with Joel. And I've been making episodes with a guy that I literally just by chance moved into this neighborhood in this new area of Ohio that I'm in. And my neighbor's an awesome outdoor minded, great guy who's become a great friend. We've been making a couple podcasts together. It's like this one, I feel like is just, pure expression and letting it see where it's going, wherever it goes, it goes. I just want to have a place to connect. I call it always, an online campfire. If that's all it is, I'm fine with that. Like, years ago, it came from a much different place. I started my first podcast as a sports podcast in college. I was, in school. My major was broadcast journalism. So I thought that's what I wanted to do with my career. I was a sports nut. Even after quitting playing sports and doing the hunting thing, I was like, I want to work at ESPN. I want to, work for one of these online publications that you see. And I quickly got into that about 2.5 years, actually. I was pretty far into it in terms of college. I don't recommend doing that if you're out there and you're a kid. And, going in 2.5 years, maybe the first year, I probably should have thought something was a little bit like, I just didn't like the political nature of journalism. I could see how politically charged and just how it didn't really chive with who I am as a person. But I still loved like the media and the sharing stuff. So kind of started a podcast on sports back then. And then once I scrapped that major and got more into just like a general business and marketing major, I kind of just let that podcast squander out until about 2017. I started another one with a little media startup that I had called Affiliated Outdoors. And that was with the gentleman I now call my brother-in-law, Alex. Encouraged me to do that. He was a fan and actually helped me a little bit with my sports podcast. And he's like, man, why don't you do this for outdoors? Why don't you get in there and like, my first thought is who would watch like back, around this time. And this is like 2016, 2017. I'm like, does anyone even really listen to a hunting podcast? And I'm sure there were some out there for sure that were doing it, from the start, but I didn't really consume any. So I'm like, man, I don't think anybody would want to sit and listen to that. And I at that point in time, he had wrote, I had wrote a lot of sports articles and stuff too on a website that I had. And he knew of that. He's like, well, why don't you write articles? You could, write informational articles and, how-tos and tips and tactics. And at first I kind of just blew it off and I'm like, that wouldn't work. Like people don't care. And he kept after me for whatever reason. And we started, we called it Affiliated Outdoors, and we started that together in 2017, finally launched it. And yeah, that was like my first kind of jump into a real podcast and actually doing interviews. First interview ever was with Stan Potts. If anyone out there watches outdoor television, you probably know who Stan Potts is. And he's one of, he was like our first interview just by happenstance. We got him on the show, and it really kind of started to take off from there. And I absolutely loved it. And, wanted to make it into my career. So I was fully, moving in that direction. And then good old COVID hit in 2020. And it was a double whammy for me, because I found out is at that same time, my wife and I were expecting Drake, our firstborn. And I looked up and I'm like, wow, yeah, a podcast probably is not going to cut it when it comes to, a child and a wife and a mortgage and all that stuff. So I had to jump out of it for a little bit, until this year, where I really decided, I'm like, you know what, I need to share something again and just connect with more people on a human level to talk about this hunting stuff that I love so much. So that's, I know kind of a long way around it, but that's how I ended up here and how we got connected, and Joel and, all that fun stuff.
Great. It's a good little adventure to meeting me, which I'm sure is the pinnacle of your life.
Hey, absolutely, man. No, this is cool for me, because honestly, I mean, and I've been on some other podcasts and stuff in the past, and they were, back then, and this is 2018, 2019, probably the last time I was truly on someone else's podcast. It's like, man, it's so refreshing to go on and talk to somebody. And especially, I love your angle, man. Your angle is awesome with the fatherhood aspect, the faith aspect. It's just really refreshing. I felt like maybe back then it wasn't as, I don't know if I would say popular. It wasn't as prevalent, back then, to see people kind of just speaking their truth and dedicating a show to that. So, yeah. Hey man, don't discount it at all. I'm super pumped to be here, and it's an awesome conversation. I love connecting with people who have this mindset, this lifestyle that we love. It's the best.
I think it's become more open for to people to express, especially with, not to get into politics, but kind of what's been going on culturally and how things have gone such the opposite direction. It's like, I gotta punch through this. And it's basically like, I'm all in on my faith, and I'm gonna be loud about it, kind of thing.
That's I love that.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of where, and it's probably a good thing too. I said this to, I think it was the last interview I had, where I brought up the Jesus Revolution, and that we're possibly seeing something like that today in its own form.
Yes, absolutely. I completely, I feel it. I think I feel it. You feel it. And you're seeing it in areas and interest areas of life that just it would have never happened a year or 2 years ago. Like it's just something is happening. And I mean, can any one of us, I can't deny it. Like I'm a huge football fan, admittedly. Anyone wants to throw daggers at me, I'm an Ohio State Buckeyes fan. I know that draws a lot of stark lines, and people just hate the Buckeyes. I get it. I won't fault you for that at all. But
my grandfather and his brother went to USC, so I never went there, but we're a USC family.
So you're a Trojan. Okay. Yeah. See, we all have that's it. I feel like every outdoors and college football, man. I mean, when I was working with Affiliated Outdoors and doing all that stuff, I was, I would call it making cameo appearances and doing some podcasting with these guys from a show called Mass Pursuit TV. And they're still on the air on the Pursuit channel, and they're Southern guys. And I met them mutually through a guy that was from my hometown, who was the co-host of the show at that time. He's a big Buckeyes fan. I'm a big Buckeyes fan. And then all these guys that were on the staff with Mass Pursuit, they're all Southern guys. You know, they were Georgia fans. I think Miami was one of my buddy Wilbur, all these guys. And it was every year, 2018, I went down to Louisville, Kentucky for the ATA show. And man, that's all we talked about the whole week. Nobody talked about hunting or making deals with sponsorships. I mean, we did, but everything was about college football and just talking junk to each other and going off on these alliances. But college football and the outdoors, two things I love. And the point I was making there is I'm sure a lot of people have probably seen this, but Ohio State's running back, his name's Travion Henderson, scored a touchdown in the playoff game against Tennessee. No shade to the Volunteer fans out there, but he did the sign language sign for Jesus loves you when he scored and went into the end zone. And my brother-in-law, Alex, who's like, he's an active social media user. He definitely is very fluent in it, but he's not like, he hasn't even come on the podcast with me yet this time around. He used to always co-host with me. He's got my niece and nephew, very busy guy, full life, you know, all these things, coaches baseball, does this, all kinds of fun stuff. But he doesn't post or generate content. He caught that sign as he was, you know, watching the football game, and he sent me a text message, and then he posted a TikTok reel of that of the Ohio State running back doing Jesus loves you. And within a few hours, like at midnight at the end of the game, it had surpassed like 500,000 views or something in just a few hours. And by the next day, I mean, it had like 600,000 views, 20,000 shares, you know, a few thousand comments. Like, this is from an account that he has a few hundred people that he pretty much knows personally on. Right. So it's just, I thought a little cool thing of it. There's some shift happening. Or at least some recognition of it. And I thought, you know, seeing that in a college football game, you would have never seen a college athlete do that in the last few years. You know, better yet, to see it take off virally like that online. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always fun to see. I remember, I can't remember his name. There was a gentleman, I think it was Matt Barkley.
Matt Barkley, yeah, USC quarterback. Yeah, I remember.
I think it was him that would take a knee and pray every game. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember, I'm sure everyone remembers Tim Tebow, right? Like that was kind of, that was the hysteria around Tim Tebow back in, what was that? 2011, 2012, whatever. All those years ago, that was controversial, right? Like just him kneeling before every game, or like Barkley, kneeling before every game. It was like, oh my gosh, these guys are really expressing their faith. And now you've got a 21-year-old kid who's, he did the sign right there. Jesus loves you. Like that. That's so cool to me. And I think it's just, like you said, it's a cultural a revolution really that's happening on all kinds of different fronts. And like you said, we could go down a bunch of different offshoots with that, but it's just really refreshing and great to see that happening. And I feel like it for me, the first exposure I got to it with outward expression was here in the outdoors. It was watching a bow hunter on, pick your favorite show. I mean, so many of them, get all shook up after they shoot a big old buck, and they're thanking God the next sentence. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool. You don't see, I didn't grow up watching, and athletes doing that a whole lot. You would hear here and there, maybe an athlete would, give glory to God after the game or something like that. But to see these outdoorsmen, these hunters, like so open about it, and many of them using their platform to promote it openly, was really not just reassuring, but refreshing and encouraging for me, for sure.
Yeah. Isn't, I think Tebow's doing like Christian conventions now, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he's really involved with a lot of things. I read his book not too long. I mean, probably 5-6 years ago. I guess that is kind of a long time ago now, but he's a really interesting guy. And he does all kinds of great things. I know he does I think it's called a night to shine for like special needs kids and special needs people. And just an amazing guy, but caught so much hate. I mean, I remember it all those years ago. Like, I mean, he caught a ton of hate, a ton of controversy for trying to use his platform openly to promote faith. And it back then, I guess I didn't quite register like what all the hysteria was about, right? It just it didn't really hit me. And then now I realize like it's kind of cool to see it come a full flip, and now it's like actually embraced, and you know, they are broadcasting some of these things by default on national television during some huge athletic events and things like that. So it's definitely a powerful thing that's happening.
Yeah, it's really nice to see. So what are your plans for the coming year on the outdoors?
Yeah, I'm a pretty simple guy when it comes to the actual practice of the outdoors. Now, I'd love to sit here and be like, I've got this hunt planned and that hunt planned and this trip planned. I'm a real person, just like everybody out there. And I've got a career and a family. We've talked about that. Like I just want to make the most of every opportunity. That's my simple goal. Every year, whether I bring a camera or fire up a podcast microphone, whatever it is, like, just want to make the most out of every opportunity that I've got this year to get out there. And that means, some days you don't feel like going out, but you have that one day on the calendar that, you're off work or whatever. It's like, want to keep making sure that I'm doing that. And my big thing this year is like kind of what we talked about too, with the kids, getting the kids involved as much as I can. Right now with the hunting side of things, it is tricky. They're not noise compliant, let's say, just yet. They still don't understand when it's time to be quiet.
Yeah.
But that's something else I'd like to hopefully, this fall, even, looking ahead to the next deer season, as I always seem to be, I'd like to get them out there with me, even if it means, boogering up a hunt one night, just having them in the blind for a little bit. The more they're able to understand, it will be a dream come true, really, on all fronts. But this year I really want to just simplify, still enjoy it for what it is, but continue to document it all in a fun way and tell these stories on the podcasts and just have fun with it. Really. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're there for, is to enrich our lives with it, not burden ourselves. I've had to remind myself of that many times over the years, especially, like I said, a few years ago, doing the whole affiliated outdoors thing and sending footage to the guys on the TV show. Like it was very much, it got to a point where it was more work than play. And I've constantly tried to remind myself this time around, where I'm like, I want it to happen naturally. I don't want to force it into that hole of like, okay, yeah, I want to try and take this thing to the next level. Of course I want to. I want the content to be good. I want to connect with more people like yourself, right? Like that's what makes this fun. But at the end of the day, it's about enjoying it first and foremost. And that's the thing I want to remind myself of throughout this 25 calendar year.
Yeah that's definitely the thing to keep focused on. I've had so this year my daughter was in the hospital in January, and then again this last month for asthma stuff, and my wife was as well for gallbladder issue. And then at the end of this year, it might not have been necessary, but my youngest also for RSV, I think is the type of cold.
That's scary. Yeah. Oh man, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm hoping this was the rough year. Next year's going to be the calm year, and I got some hunts that I want to do. So I hope everything just goes smoothly, basically. Amen,
brother. Hey, I pray that it goes that way for you, and we all have those years, no doubt. And that's the good thing, though, that you have the outdoors when you can get there, right, to lean back on, and your faith more than anything, right, to lean into in those challenging years. But man, I feel like that's kind of how God works, at least in my experience, right? Like everything's preparing you for something else, for a greater cause, is my belief in life. We've all got testimonies to that we could go into, but yeah, honestly, I feel that just talking to you, man. I feel like hopefully setting up for a great year. And a great thing with this podcast, I've tried my best to check out what you're doing, and everything I've seen, man. 2 thumbs up, and major credit to you. So hopefully more time in the outdoors and more health, right? That's all. Anytime you have young kiddos, like I talked about it on my podcast not long ago. I'm like, I still plan to do a show every week, guys, but we are currently entering 6th season right now.
Yeah.
And
Right.
if the kids, infect me with some plague, it might break that weekly cadence,
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've had some sort of cough the entire month of December, which is cut into my end of the year hunt. I don't know if it would have helped with this scenario that I had to deal with. But I guess you call them intruders.
Yes.
But what was I going with that? I don't know. What I will say though is for I think what I might do next year, talking about getting the kids in the blind. I have deer go through my yard all the time, so I was thinking about getting like a 2-seater stand and just basically my oldest son loves to take photos. They're usually just like nothing, so it's nothing professional, but he just enjoys it. So I thought, hey, if I can get I thought if I can get his camera to stop making the beeping sound, maybe that'll be his version of taking the shot at the deer.
Bingo. Hey, you know what? That's a skill I wish I would have picked up way earlier in life. And that was actually a big focus of my most recent podcast, because my neighbor Derek is he's a camera wizard. I am like, I've had people tell me that I'm, this or that, and I do well with a camera. And I'm like, no, listen, I don't know anything about a camera. All I know is I hit record and I go hunting. The hunt is what is important to me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. If you can get him into the photography and videography, if that's something that he's interested in, and really get honed on the technical aspect of a camera, man, that's a special skill. That is a really special skill. I feel like it's an art, right? The people that you're either good at it or you're not. And I feel like I don't have the artist's touch in that realm. I'm good enough to make it work. I think I could say that, but I don't feel like I have that true touch or that true eye. I guess you really have to have to be a true camera wizard. So if he's starting young, man, I'd run with it for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Maybe get him involved with the church photography or something.
Absolutely, all of that. That's a great idea.
So what are any of the socials you have that you want people to be able to find you on?
Yeah, so I'm on just about everything against my will. I mean, I guess I would say, no, I enjoy the connection part, right? Otherwise, things like this don't happen. So yeah, I've got a Facebook page. It's just Chris Campanelli Outdoors. I don't have any, that was part of my goal with reigniting my outdoor media brand, if you will, is to have no brand at all. I just want it to be, I didn't name it or anything. The most fancy thing I did is create the podcast, the BaseCamp Podcast, which, if you didn't realize, is just a play off of part of my last name. And it's exactly that. It's BaseCamp, very basic, very simple. That's my approach now. So you can find me there. We're on YouTube. If you just look up my name, Chris Campanelli, that's literally all my YouTube channel is. And then Facebook, Chris Campanelli Outdoors. I'm at Chris Camp Hunts on Instagram and TikTok. I always get in there and I'm like, is it BaseCamp Hunts or is it Chris Camp Hunts? It's Chris Camp Hunts on those. So easiest thing you could do probably is go to one of those, like Facebook or Instagram. And I have a link. It's a beacon link. It's one of those landing pages that has all the links to the rest of the stuff. So
right.
That's the easiest way to find me if you want to.
Good. I'll make sure to put that in the description.
I appreciate you, man. I look forward. We got to schedule a time to get you on my show and kind of reverse the roles where we can show you off and interview you. That's something I want to do for sure as soon as you have availability.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll
That'd
get that scheduled. But I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else that we didn't discuss that you were hoping to talk about?
No, man, you did a great job. Yeah, I thought we had a amazing conversation. I want to thank you for taking the time and you pulling through, man. I know you were just under the weather. You're trying to get some hunts in, and it's just been a pleasure. Yeah, getting to converse with you and messaging back and forth. I feel like you don't know anybody right on social media until you truly know somebody. I think we can all agree with that. But like you can get a really pretty good idea, a good gist on somebody, and man, you seem like an awesome guy, and you're doing an awesome thing and spreading an amazing message. So pleasure to connect with you, man. And I appreciate you, taking the interest and the time to have me on your show.
Well, this was fun. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I had a ton of fun. Really appreciate you taking the time, especially New Year's Eve, man. I appreciate you making the time, and certainly great time. We'll get you on and return the favor, my man.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
I appreciate you, man. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Have a good night.
Thank you, buddy. It was a great time.
Thank you for tuning in. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. And if you want to join the adventure, you can pick yourself up a nice hat or a camping coffee mug and brew yourself some coffee right above a nice little fire at greatoutdoorspodcast.com. Oh, kind of grainy.